So I'm reading a book right now called We the Living by Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand is obviously a philosopher. Well, that's not obvious. It's not obvious to anyone, really, except people who know. So she was a philosopher from Russia. And she wrote, in this We the Living, the main theme, I think, is about the oppression of the individual by the state and what the individual can do under such circumstances. But it got me thinking. It gets me thinking, because I'm not yet finished the book. I think to myself, wow, do people really have so little respect for themselves that they just allow the state to bowl them over? They just allow the state to devour their lives, consume their lives. And then I think to myself, yeah, people have little respect for themselves. And it's occurring right now, in an analogous way, but obviously not the same way, because at least on the surface, what we in weird countries have going for us is a democracy. So it's not a full-blown authoritarian state in the sense that it was in We the Living. That was like USSR, Soviet Russia, when the shit hit the fan there and people were just, yeah, it was a nightmare for the people who lived there under a communist regime, okay? So it's not exactly the same, but there's something similar going on in that people refuse to demonically pursue their own creative goals as imagined by themselves, and they just fit in. They just slip right into societal molds that have been prescribed to them. So it's like, where is your individuality? Where you've gotten lost now. You are not who you are. You're some cultural creation. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. Because you've just fit into a role that culture has foisted upon you without any objection. That's exactly what the people in We the Living are doing. They're just doing as the state tells them. They're saying the state gives them this role and they adopt it merrily, happily, despite being half starved to death. So, people have so little self-respect that they can't even determine their own life's path. Okay. Now, that was the first point. The second point is this. People are going to have to start determining their own life's path, but also understanding that social relationships are only going to become more important going forward. So how does that relate to determining your own life's path? I suppose it relates because in figuring out what you want to do, you're going to have to interact with other people. In fact, humans are the most social of all creatures. Of all social organisms, humans are ultra social. It's pretty much how we've gotten to where we are. But, and this is a big but, in recent human history, we have had access to massive amounts of concentrated fuel in the form of fossil fuels. Massive amounts of concentrated energy in the form of fossil fuels. So this carbon pulse, because they're hydrocarbons, this carbon pulse, this influx of highly concentrated energy into the human social ecosystem in recent human history has fooled us into thinking that we no longer need the social relationships that we once in an ancestral environment wholly depended on for our survival and our persistence through time. Because think about it this way. In each barrel of oil, there's something like 1,760 kilowatt hours of energy. Each human being can output 0.6 kilowatt hours of work per day. What? 0.6 on a good day? That's nothing compared to the barrel of oil. So now think about it this way. Say to yourself, okay, how many human labor equivalents are in that barrel of oil? And then it's like, oh, now I see why humans have been misled into believing that they can do without other human beings and they can just backstab other human beings, because its machinery and oil have replaced the need for social relationships. But going forward, that's not going to be the case anymore, because it's a fact that that oil is a finite resource, and as we exponentially increase the rate at which we consume it, it's going to deplete rapidly in the next coming, decades, let's say, where human social relationships will become ever more important. So, to wrap this up, it's important to determine your own life's path, to not fall for the misleading beliefs that your culture would have you believe. And it's also important to begin developing your interpersonal relationship skills, because those social relationships, that social capital, is only going to become ever more important going forward into the future. Does that make sense? Methinks it does.